Okay, so forms. In the web, actually, the web has mostly two purposes. One is get data and visualize it, right? And the other one is capture data and send it back to the server. If you look at most applications that you use in your day-to-day, those are the only functions, right? Every other thing is just a subset of that, right? If you're watching Netflix, you're just getting the video from the server and visualizing in your computer, right? If you have, I would say, Twitter or LinkedIn, what you have, the first set is getting all your tweets from the server, showing in your timeline, right? And when you want to interact, let's say you want to tweet, you just click a button, you type whatever you want to tweet, and you hit enter. So that is basically capturing data and send it to the server, right? So that's pretty much all the applications. If you go to your bank application and you want to make a sales transfer, the first thing is showing your account, how much money you have in your account, right? And then when you say send money with Zelle or transfer money to another account, it will pull up some type of form. You will fill it with the information, and then when you hit send, it will take that information and will send it back to the server, right? So most applications, if not all applications, are basically a subset of getting data from the server and visualizing it and capturing data in the browser and sending it back to the server, right? So forms is the part where we capture information and we send it back to the server. So it's really important because a big part of our today applications are basically forms, right? And forms can be as simple as user password. I would say that's the simplest one, right? User password, that's a form, right? Because you have to put your email and then put your password. And then click a button to take that information and send them back to the server so the server can check your identity, correct? Or can be as complex as put all the information that you are required to have an insurance application, for example, right? So you have to put, let's say it's a car insurance, you have to put your car model, you have to put your car color, you have to, the year, the make, everything. How long you've been a driver, if you have prior accidents. All information you can capture in the browser, but the browser is not the one that's giving you the rate, right? It's the server. So you take all that information, you send it back to the server, and then the server makes the calculation and sends us back some quote, and we have to visualize that quote, right? So capturing information in the browser is really important. It's a big part of what web applications are created today. And of course, we are talking about basically HTML and CSS, just for now, right? So there is a set of HTML tags that will help us build forms. The most important of these tags is the input tag. Actually, the form tag. So we have form and we have input. So with these two, we can build any form. So there is a form tag in HTML that we can use to create forms. Now, what I'm saying is like it's not the most important. It's because you can create forms without the form tag. What I'm saying is that it's not mandatory. It's like if you don't have a form, it will not work. It will still work. It's just that semantically is incorrect, right? So every time you have a form in your web page, you have to put a form tag, right? Okay, so you have a form tag, and whatever you put inside that form tag are the inputs of the form, right? Let's say you have a form that where you need an authentication, like email and password, right? So you use the input tag and you say type email, name, email. And notice that the input tag is a self-closing tag. That means that it doesn't have any content inside, okay? If you put some content inside here, like email, assuming that this will be like the label of the input tag, that's incorrect, right? input tag is self-closing. That means that nothing should be nothing inside them. Okay, so that's an input tag for an email. Notice that I use two attributes. I use the type attribute to specify what type of input what type of data I'm accepting in this input, and the other one is the name. The name means what is the name of that data, right? Because when I send that data to the server, that the email that I enter, it will be attached to that email. So email will be whatever I enter, and then I will add another one here called password.
Where's the label?
Interesting. I haven't, not yet. You will see it now. So right now, this form, and actually let's do this. Let's take this form and let's put it in a GS Fiddle. Okay, so let's put it here and let's see how that works. You see it down below? Let me see if I can make it look bigger. There you go. So you can see down below that I have the email and the password. And in the email will automatically, the browser will be smart enough to autocomplete the most recent emails that I've been using, so it will autocomplete my email. In the password, you notice that the password is already protected, right? Because I said in the code, as using the attribute type, that this will be a password. That means that, of course, we'll treat it as a password. Now, why is important? The password one is pretty obvious, but the type for the email, some people might even do this, like text, and assume that you can enter an email. It's okay, but you see the autocomplete is not there, so it's not autocompleting anything. The other thing is that some browsers, especially mobile browsers, will help you enter the right information if you said that this is an email. Because when I said that this is an email and then open this page in a mobile browser, the keyword that the user will see will automatically have the @ sign, right? So it's easy to enter an email because I'm saying that this is an email. Same way if I do number or phone, it will be easy to enter a phone or enter a number, right? So there is a bunch of types that we can use here to modify the behavior of that input, okay? So now, the input tag also works, and this is one of the most another type is checkbox. And notice that now the rendering changes completely. It's no longer an input when you can type. It's actually a thing that you can click, right? Got it? Perfect. So that's what we use this input tag for. By the way, there is more types. There's actually type, I think a radio, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So radio is the one where you can select only one from a group. Let's make a radio the way it should be. Okay, the way to type them together is using what could be
Chicken.
what?
Chicken, beef, and fish.
Okay. You can only have one, right? No, wait. Name is how would you say protein, right? Protein. And the value will be chicken. So there will be different values for the same protein, right? Beef and Fish. Okay. Let's just add one more because I know we have. I mean, it's just messing with you. But I mean, there's another one. Okay. Yes.
Can you add a forgot password?
Sorry?
Can you add forgot password?
Yeah, but let's see how that works, right? Because it's not like forgot password doesn't have to do with the input. It's just something extra that you have to build. Yeah, it's different. Okay, so you see here that now I can only click one, right? Because they are all tied together by the name attribute. That means that whatever one I'm selecting, that will be the value. If I check the first one, it will be chicken. If I check the last one, it will be tofu, right? Okay, so I think there's another one that we can use, the input type file, and you can check that too. Let's go to picture. You see, I can select the file. Okay, so what I'm saying is that there is a lot of options here that we can use. And you can Google in the documentation, the MDN, the Mozilla Developer Network documentation, what are the possible types. Like right now, I think I put the most common types here. An input, well, I'm missing one. And that's a different input. Text area. And this is the only one that can have data inside. A text area is basically like an input, but bigger. You can put more text inside, okay? Okay, so these are the type of inputs that most applications use. By the way, text area, I'm not even sure because I never used it before. Like, depending on the type of apps that you're building, well, maybe in Twitter, because you need a big space to tweet or whatever, yes. But usually, like, show me a text area in your bank application. No, it won't have one. Maybe if you put the description of the transfer, I don't know. But yeah, those are the input types that we can use. So we can use type email, type text, type number, etc. We can use type password for passwords. Checkbox means a check. Notice that checkbox you can put as many as you want, and they will not be. They are independent. They don't. Right? You can click as many as you want. Radio is basically select one. File, you can select a file from the browser during the user's computer or the text area to include like write bigger text, right? Type. Cool. Now, questions before I move on? Yes.
Where's the code for the button that you have there?
The what?
You have a button there, don't you? Examinar.
Oh, the one that says examinar. That's part of the file input.
Oh.
Because I need to, I mean, in Spanish, in English, it will be file or select file or choose file, I think. It will be the name of that. So yeah, depends on the browser, right? That's the default view of that input. And actually, it's really bad. Notice that mostly no applications have this. Like when you upload files to an application, nobody uses the input file like exactly like it is natively, because it's really old. Like no style. It's a button there that you cannot modify, and then it has a bunch of text on the right? Usually applications hide that button. They're still there because that you needed to load the file, but they don't show it, right? They do some trickery there, so you can see what file you uploaded, but they don't allow you to see the input type file because it's really ugly and it's almost impossible to style, right? That button, you cannot change the name of examinar. That's it. That's what it is in that browser, right? So if you are limited by that, then you hide it and then you put whatever you want, right? You can still do that. There is another one, actually. Let's see now that I'm saying that you can hide it. There is an input type hidden. Of course, it's hidden. Nothing will show up. But it exists. That means that you can set a name. Remember, name is the name of the value that will be sent to the server. And I can say here, hidden prop or hidden, and you can set a value because that's the only way to set it with some value. Meaning there is no way, I mean, in JavaScript there is, but there is no way the user to interact with that input, right? The user cannot see it, it's hidden, but still there. Okay, so we have all these input types. We have hidden, email, text. By the way, when you are entering names, it's just text like this, like regular text. Let me put another one here so we make it clear.
Is there a rich text? Or is it just text?
There is no rich text. The closest thing to a rich text is the text area. It's not rich. It's just text, right? These are all the things that we can do. I can show you later, but it's not. Okay, so we have most of the types here. Of course, we're missing phone. We're missing number. It's a bunch of them. Before I move on to the labels, questions? No questions?
Hidden is probably good for being able to send something about this form.
Exactly.
Code.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess that's-
Yeah. That's used for that, exactly. Cool. So now, we need to label these things, right? By the way, there is a cool property. Some people prefer to do this, I don't. And it's a issue of usability. And this is a special property called, well, not here, of course, nobody will see this. There is a special property called placeholder that you can use. And placeholder is basically the text that shows when the field is empty. And you can style it differently than the actual text. So you see it's like shaded gray, and when I start typing, my name is a little bit darker. So you can style it different, right? So and it only shows when it's empty. Some forms, you will see some forms using that placeholder to just avoid using a label. Especially the space is very limited. You can use it. I guess it's okay. Actually, it's good for usability, but it's also good for usability to use the actual label, right? So there is another tag in HTML called label. So we have form, we have input, and we have label. And the label tag is used to label inputs. Now, the way they work is that you can place it close to, or wherever you want, close to the input, right? Label. And this is the name. Now, it's not complete. We're still missing something here. And it's because, I mean, visually, that's what we want, right? We just want the label next to the input. But check this out. Let me do the same here next to these inputs, right? And I'm going to use some CSS here. Check boxes. I just want them to show in a row. Check boxes. So display flex direction column. Okay. So you see the checkboxes now are separated, and I will put labels for every one of these checkboxes. Label. So let's say this is add sauce. Following with the let's do add utensils. Hopefully that's the way we write it. Let me see. Utensils. Oh, utensils. And let's add one more here. Call it back. Okay. Let's start this a little bit more. Sorry about that. Okay. Call this check, and a check will be display flex, and nothing else. Okay. Still makes sense, right? The code? It's just that I don't have that much space here. Okay, let's add one more here. And one more here. Okay, so we have add sauce, add utensils, and add back, right? We put the labels. We can put the label also behind it, so it makes more sense from the checkpoint point of view, right? So label is the tag that helps me build labels, right? Now, what's the point of the label? The label, I mean, you can put a P or a div, and it will still work, right? Because it's just an area where you put the label of that tag. But notice this. To click on sauce, I have to click on the checkbox. I cannot click on the text, right? But usually, if I click on add utensils, that should also work, right? So that's the point of the label. You have to tell the label, this label is for that input. So that means when you click the label, the input gets triggered, right? So right now, I can say here, this is for, oh, I think it's sauce. The name should be different, of course. This is utensils, and this is back. So I can say this is for sauce, and this is for utensils, and this is for back.
I think it has to really be ID.
Yeah, you have to have put the ID. I hate that thing. So ID sauce, ID utensils. Shit. The name should be enough, to be honest. Utensils.
So the name is more for like the variable that's holding.
That's the holding the data and sending it to the server. Yeah. And it should be back here. Okay. So now if I click sauce, you see, it works, and it tends to the same and back the same. What if you mess the label and you say utensils twice? Interesting. Oh wait, oh wait, no. This is back, but the 4 should be utensils. So if I made the 4 in a label, and I click that label, you see I'm checking the wrong thing. Pretty messed up, right? So this is the, got it? So that's the semantic way to create labels. You have to write the label, and you have to specify why or where that label is for, right? So right here, I should have, right here, I should say ID name, and this label is for name. And notice that when I click name, the input gets focused. Trigger, yeah. In a checkbox, we'll get check or uncheck depending on what the value. Same happens with the radio, right? if you have a radio, you can put labels on the radios, and then you can label those radios and put the ID. So say this label is for that radio, right? So when you click the label, it will also select that radio. Got it? Questions?
And instead of value, could you put ID instead of value? Or if it's a chicken, beef, fish?
No. It's just value is a different thing here. Like actually check. Let me explain what value is. In this case, for example, when you click name and you put a name, that's the value, right? In the email, you can say, okay, this is the email, and if you put a password, I will put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's the password. Even if you don't see it, but the value is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Now, when you click a checkbox, the value will be true or false. So that means that if I check this add sauce, the sauce name, so the sauce property will be true. If I don't have it clicked, then it will be false, right? So those are the values. Now, when you have a radio, you have to specify what is the value of each option, right? Because it's no longer true or false, and you don't have a way to specify it manually. So you have to tell the tag, especially the radio, that if someone clicks on this first radio, the value of protein will be chicken. And if you check the last one or this one, it will be fish, right? So in the data that we're sending to the server, it will say protein, fish. That's what value means. If you set the value, this is another thing. If you set the value, let's set value here directly. John Doe. You see what happened? The default value is John Doe, because when I open the form, it will already have that value, right? But of course, I don't want that. Well, you want that in some forms. If you know the data that it was there before, you can put it in the form, and that will be visible, right? So what is that? Here. Okay? Make sense? So value is the value of that input. If it's a radio, then you have to specify each option, what the value will be. And the value of a picture is whatever file you upload. Correct? And the value of a text area is whatever is inside this text over here. So whatever is inside the By the way, the text area is very, I would say, like right here, you see there has some spaces in the front. It's because I leave the spaces as well. Got it? Cool. Questions? Yes.
You don't have to say
Go ahead.
The radio, I noticed that when you check it, you can't check it to uncheck it.
No,
Is that-
you have only one. That's it. If you click it, that it remains there.
There's no other code.
There's
that
no.
do
Well, you can do it in JavaScript.
In JavaScript,
Yeah,
it will
you-
allow you to
Yeah, unselected. Yeah. But from the HTML, native HTML, there's no way. If you click it, they will stay click it, because there is no other option. So that means that you click it.
So once you select that, you're like, oh man. I can't click it."
Refresh the page. That's the only page. That's the only way. Yeah. By the way, checkbox, these ones, they have an indeterminate state. And you've probably seen that. I mean, it's impossible to get it in HTML and CSS. Like, there is no way to set that indeterminate state. It will look like you've probably seen like a checkbox that has a dash in the middle. That is not true or not false. It's just indeterminate, right? But there is no way to set it in HTML or CSS. The only way to do it is via JavaScript, right? That's another issue with checkbox. Okay, so far, are we good? Great. So now, let's see how can we send this data, right, to the server. the way to send this data to the server is first, well, let me remove that file because files are really problematic, and we will explain why later. But if the way we send this data to the server using a regular form is we have to put a couple of attributes in the form. The first one is method. So the method attribute specifies what type of, specify how are we going to send the data to the server. There is usually two options here. One is post. Most of the times we're sending data in post, in a post request, or get. We're gonna use post, and we will see what's the difference in a minute. And the other one is action. If I remember correctly, action. An action is the URL where this data will be sent, right? If no action is specified, that means that this, if no action is specified, that means that this form will send the data to itself, right? So that means that the same page will be opened again, and then all the parameters, all the data will be added to that request, right? If you're using a GET request, the difference is that the GET request, you will see the data in the URL, encoded in the URL. When I say encoded in the URL, that means that if you have a form with method get, and let's say you have an input type text, name, let's say name, right? When you submit this file, by the way, the way to send the information is called submit. The way you submit this file, when you submit this, you will see in the URL something like this. An ampersand somewhere at the end of the, an ampersand, question mark at the end of the URL, and then you will see name equals whatever name you put there, John Doe. And that's the way the data gets encoded in a GET request, right? We can test it. If you are sending a POST request, then the data is also sent as this, but it's sent in the HTTP request, so you don't get to see it. And the other thing is that you don't get to reply. Actually, you're seeing when some page fails and you try to refresh the page, and it says this page will resend the data to the server. That's because that form will send you the data in a POST request, right? We will test both of them. So let's do get first, right? Okay, so we have the input, we have the name. Well, we have a hidden input, we have a name, we have a email, we have password, we have some checkboxes, some radio, and a text area. By the way, the text area doesn't have description. Got it? So those are my properties. That means that my data will have hidden prop, will have name, we have email, we have pass, not password, pass, because that's the name of the property, the name of that property. We'll have sauce, we'll have utensils, we'll have bag, we'll have protein, and we'll have description, right? Those are the properties that I'm collecting, and I will send to the server. Now, the way to submit a form, there is two ways. One is using a button with a submit type, or we can do it in JavaScript, right? Since we are not there with JavaScript yet, let's use a button. So there is a button tag that you can use in HTML, and there is several types of button that you can use. The one that we're going to use here is submit. Like this, right? So whatever data we put in the form, let's call it John. Email is this. Password is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I would add sauce, and I want beef, and I call hello, right? When I send the data, oh, this is JS Fiddle. Of course, I cannot send data here. can I see? How can I trace this? Oh, I know. Let's copy this and put it in a code space, right? So we can run it. Oh, this is the wrong one, not this. We need a. No, we need a workspace based on the hello. This one. Yeah, this one is good. Great, quick. So this code space will allow me to put an index HTML file and just put the code there, so I don't have to, spend so much time on that. Okay, new file, index, new file, index HTML. 5 and okay, where's the fiddle? Here. And to execute it, remember, we go to the terminal and we run this command. Okay. Oh, we're missing the CSS. It will look a little bit different, but still, right? But notice that when I do, okay, this is the name, this is the email. I'm not sure what password is this, so I will change it. Yeah. Okay, add sauce, add back, I want beef, hello, right? When I send this data, notice that the URL, I'm sending the data to myself, right? Because I didn't specify a different page, right? In the code, in the form tag, I didn't specify the action attribute. The action attribute specifies where that data is going to. Since I didn't specify one, that means that it will go to itself. So that means that the same page will be opened again, but all the data attached, right? And that data, notice that is right here in the URL. So same URL, and after the question mark, yes. After the question mark, we have all of our properties. We have the hidden prop, the hidden input. We have the name, it was John plus Doe. By the way, that plus, that means is the space, because in the URL things have to be encoded differently. Email, you see that my email is encoded there as well. The ampersand is also encoded differently. The password is 128. Source is on, back is on. Interesting that utensil is not there. So that means that we don't get properties in checkbox that we don't set. Protein means fish, and description is hello, right? So all the data gets encoded and added to the URL and sent to that page. Now that's a GET request. Let me make this bigger so you all can see. Right? So that's a GET request. Let's simplify this a little bit. So let's live with email and password. So this will be now like a simple this is the equivalent of a login form, right? Okay, let's check it out now. Okay, email, password, sign in. Whatever email I put, whatever password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sign in. I'm sending the data to myself. Email Ernesto at password 128. Yes.
Obviously, right now we can see it on the HTTP, but if it's sent to a server, that server is the one that's seeing that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Usually you get a server, and that server will have that response. I think there is a server that allows us to, it's like an echo server that we can send the data, and it will tell us what was the data that was sent. Maybe I can find it. If not, try to Google it, echo, like echo server, something like that. But yeah, that's the idea. Now, what if we change it to post? Right? So if we send it as a post request, we can still see that we're sending that data. The way to do it is by opening the console, the inspector in the terminal, in the browser. There is a tab called Network. Let me see if we can make it bigger here. You see that says Network tab? Chrome has it, Firefox has it, so every browser has the same tab, Network. And this Network tab register all the requests that are being sent, right? So right now I have my web page, and now I will send my data in a post request, and you will see the difference there. So here I will put same email and same password, right? Sign in. Wait, what is the request? Oh, there it is. Okay, so there's the request. Notice that I'm sending the request to the same URL, right? The method now is post. Of course, that server is telling me, hey, I am not accepting this post request, but we're still sending the data. And in the payload section, you will see that I'm sending email, this, password, this, right? Now, the actual way to encode it is the same as the URL, right? It's the same encoding. Of course, we can see like decoded, so it's easier to read. But we are sending the same data to the same URL. It's just using a post request. And notice that in the post request, the URL doesn't get that data. So the user doesn't see all that information in the URL, right? So it's cleaner. And this is the preferred way to do it when you are sending data to a server. You don't put the data in the GET request, you send the data as a post request. Because usually the server that is responding to that is not a web page. It's just a server that gets the data, does some calculation, and then responds with something, right? Cool. So let's try to use an actual server. Let's see if we can find that echo server HTTP. Postman Echo. Oh, interesting. Postman Echo. Oh, I'm sure that this is the one. Let's see if we can find another one. Simply copy the URL before. Okay, let's try this. So let's use this URL and put it in the action. So right now we are sending our data to that Echo server. I guess it should work. And let's see what's the difference. Okay, so email this. Now I'm curious, what's the password? Okay, so you see that the Echo server, the Echo server responded. And the Echo server is saying, okay, I got a post request with this protocol, and the bodies had this email and this password. You see it there? So the server got the data that I was sending to it. This is a nice, okay, yeah. I mean, it helps. By the way, you see how much data we are sending to a server. It's not just the data, it's just who am I and what browser I was using and a bunch of stuff, right? So everything is there. Actually, what type of computer I have. It's a lot of information, definitely. right? Cool. Questions? Questions?
So it knows how to map it, right? The server will, like that happens on the server side, how to map those values. Right?
Yeah, yeah. The server know how to interpret that request and extract the data from the request. But all the data is sent to the server in a post request. What you see here is that request with all the data that we have in that request. All requests have a method, the protocol, the host, the IP that the server is running, the headers. The headers are basically metadata about the request. And parsed query params. Like you see, parsed query params are the URL params, right? Right now we're using a post request. That's why we have a parsed body. So we are sending the data in the body of the request. That's why post is the way to do it. But if we use a GET request, you will see that it's different in the sense, let me see. Okay, I have to go back here. If I use a GET request and I send this request, notice that it has a parse query params because the requests have the data in the URL, right? So it's not, the data is not going in the body of the request, it's going in the URL of the request. You see the URL is this host and this path, and in that path the data is encoded. So there are two different ways to send data. As a GET request, not common, it's viable, I mean you can do it, but it's not the best way to do it. And as a post request, and then the data gets sent in a post request. So the data gets sent in the body. You see the difference here. Got it? Questions, 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 questions. Questions? No questions? Cool. Well, that's pretty much it. There is another tag that we can use there is other tags that we can use, and the other tag is field set. A field set is basically a set of fields, a group of fields with labels and inputs. It's pretty uncommon. I mean, it's there, you can use it. Sometimes it's used to organize sections inside a form. You know, you have forms that it has, personal information. You have a field set for that. And then you have, I don't know, let's say it's a car insurance application. You have personal information, and then you have car information, and then you have coverage information. So you have 3 different field sets for all of those, right? That's what a field set allows you to do. But that's pretty much it, right?
Within the field set, you would put like the inputs for the
Inputs and labels as well. Yeah, everything goes inside. Now, that's pretty much it. Let's do then the